They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But nobody tells you that the coldest revenge comes from the woman everyone assumed was too broken to fight back. My name is Victoria Chun, and for 9 years I was known as Mrs. Marcus Ashford, wife of the tech genius, the visionary CEO who built next-gen solutions from a garage startup into a billion-dollar empire. People saw me at charity galas in designer gowns, smiling for cameras, the perfect accessory to his success story. What they didn't see was that I held a PhD in cybersecurity, that I'd coded half the algorithms that made his company billions, that every patent he celebrated had my fingerprints buried in the source code. They thought I was decoration. That was their first mistake. If you're already hooked and want to see how a so-called trophy wife dismantled an empire one line of code at a time, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you'll want to follow along because what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you think you know about power, betrayal, and digital warfare. The night everything changed started like any other Wednesday. Marcus came home late, smelling of expensive whiskey and cheap perfume poorly masked by cologne. I was in our home office, laptop open, supposedly working on foundation grant proposals for underprivileged tech students, my pet project that Marcus tolerated because it made him look philanthropic. "Still up?" he asked, loosening his tie without looking at me. "Finishing the scholarship committee reviews," I said, my fingers never leaving the keyboard. "How was dinner with the Singapore investors?" "Productive. We're close to finalizing the acquisition." He poured himself another drink. "Don't wait up tomorrow night either. Thompson wants to celebrate early." Thompson. His COO Jackson Thompson. The man who'd been his college roommate, his best man at our wedding, his partner in building NextGen from nothing. I'd always liked Jackson, or thought I did. "Of course," I said smoothly. "I'll be at the tech literacy fundraiser anyway." Marcus nodded, already distracted by his phone, and disappeared upstairs. I waited until I heard the shower running before I returned to what I was really doing. See, 3 weeks earlier I'd noticed something odd. A recurring transaction in our joint account. Small amounts, never more than a few thousand. Always labeled as consulting fees or vendor payments. Individually meaningless. Together over 18 months, they totaled nearly $200,000. My husband was careful I'd give him that. But he'd forgotten that I built financial tracking systems before we got married. He'd forgotten that I could trace digital breadcrumbs through layers of obfuscation that would fool most forensic accountants. What I found was so much worse than an affair. The next evening, I went to the fundraiser as planned. It was at the Meridian Hotel, the same place where Marcus and I had gotten engaged 9 years ago. Ironic, considering what I was about to do. I was networking with donors, playing my role perfectly, when Jackson Thompson's wife Melissa approached me. We'd been friendly over the years, book club meetings, occasional lunches, the kind of surface-level relationship that wives of business partners maintain. "Victoria, you look stunning as always," she said, air-kissing both my cheeks. "That dress is Valentino, isn't it?" "Good eye." I smiled. "How are the kids?" "Exhausting. Rewarding. You know." She paused, something flickering across her face. "Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. Do you have a moment?" We found a quiet corner near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Melissa ordered wine for both of us, her hands shaking slightly as she lifted her glass. "I don't know how to say this," she began, "so I'm just going to be direct. Are you aware that Marcus and Jackson have been spending a lot of time with Vanessa Park?" Vanessa Park. NextGen's VP of Marketing. 28, ambitious, and exactly the type Marcus would find irresistible. Young enough to be impressed by his success, smart enough to be useful, beautiful enough to justify the attention. "I've met her at company events," I said carefully. "Why?" Melissa pulled out her phone, swiped through photos, and handed it to me. The images showed Marcus, Jackson, and Vanessa at various restaurants, hotel bars, what looked like a yacht. All cozy. All intimate. All carefully orchestrated to exclude their wives. "I hired a private investigator," Melissa admitted. "I'm sorry, Victoria. I thought you should know." I studied the photos with clinical detachment, my mind already racing ahead. "How long?" "At least 8 months that we can confirm." 8 months. Right around when those mysterious transactions started. "Thank you for telling me," I said, returning her phone. "I appreciate your honesty. What are you going to do?" I smiled, and something in my expression made Melissa lean back slightly. What any smart woman would do. I'm going to find out exactly what they're hiding. That night, I didn't confront Marcus. I didn't cry or rage or pack my bags. Instead, I went deeper into the digital trail I'd been following. The transactions weren't just about an affair. They were breadcrumbs to something much larger. Using credentials I'd never deleted from my early days helping build NextGen's infrastructure. Access Marcus didn't know I still had. I started digging through company servers, encrypted communications, offshore account records. What I found made my blood run cold. Marcus, Jackson, and Vanessa weren't just having affairs. They were systematically embezzling from NextGen Solutions. They'd created an elaborate scheme using a fake vendor company called Quantum Innovations LLC, which existed only on paper. NextGen was paying Quantum millions for consulting services and proprietary research that never existed. The money was being laundered through a series of cryptocurrency exchanges and offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Over 3 years, they'd stolen $47 million. But here's what they didn't know. Every transaction, every encrypted message, every wire transfer left a digital signature. And I knew exactly how to read them. I spent the next 4 weeks building an airtight case. I contacted former colleagues from my PhD program, who now worked in federal cybercrime units. I documented everything: server logs, financial records, email communications, even the metadata from Vanessa's carefully curated social media posts that inadvertently revealed locations and timestamps that corroborated the embezzlement timeline. I also did something Marcus would never expect. I started liquidating assets. Quietly, methodically, I moved money from joint accounts into individual accounts in my name only. I transferred ownership of the vacation property in Aspen that was in my name. I secured copies of every important document: birth certificates, tax returns, property deeds, insurance policies. And I waited for the perfect moment. That moment came on the night of NextGen's annual shareholder gala. The company's biggest event of the year, celebrating record profits and announcing their expansion into Asian markets. Marcus was being honored as Innovator of the Decade by Tech Industry magazine. I wore red. It felt appropriate. The ballroom was packed with investors, journalists, tech moguls, and politicians. Marcus stood on stage, giving his acceptance speech about vision, perseverance, and ethical leadership. I stood in the back, watching him lie to 1,000 people without flinching. Jackson was beside me, champagne in hand. Hell of a night, huh? Marcus earned this. He certainly worked hard for it, I said, my voice neutral. You know, Victoria, you should take credit too. Behind every great man and all that. Jackson smiled, condescending and oblivious. Oh, I intend to, I replied. His smile faltered slightly. What? I said I intend to take credit. For everything. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. A single text from a blocked number. They're moving now. I excused myself and headed toward the lobby, where I'd arranged to meet Special Agent Rebecca Walsh from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. She was flanked by 4 other agents, all in tactical gear hidden beneath jackets. Mrs. Ashford, Agent Walsh said. Everything ready? Everything, I confirmed, handing her a USB drive. Complete evidence package. Server access logs, financial records, cryptocurrency transaction histories, communications between all 3 conspirators. You'll also find evidence of tax evasion and securities fraud. And you're certain about the timing? The wire transfer to their final offshore account goes through in. I checked my watch. 12 minutes. Once that transaction completes, you'll have proof of active money laundering in progress. Agent Walsh nodded to her team. Let's move. I walked back into the ballroom just as Marcus finished his speech to thunderous applause. He was beaming, holding his crystal trophy, soaking in the adoration. Vanessa stood near the stage looking proud. Jackson rejoined his wife, who had no idea what was coming. Then the ballroom doors burst open. FBI. Nobody move. The room erupted into chaos. Agents flooded in, moving with precision toward 3 specific targets. Marcus's face went from confusion to horror to rage in seconds as agents surrounded him on stage. Marcus Ashford, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement, Agent Walsh announced, her voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. You have the right to remain. I didn't hear the rest. I was watching Jackson, who'd gone pale as agents cuffed him. Vanessa tried to run but was intercepted before she reached the exit. 3 simultaneous arrests captured by every camera in the room. Marcus's eyes found mine across the ballroom. The rage in them was incandescent. "You," he mouthed. I raised my champagne glass in a mock toast and smiled. The aftermath was beautiful chaos. NextGen's stock plummeted 23% before trading was halted. The board convened an emergency meeting and suspended all 3 executives. News vans surrounded our house by morning. My phone exploded with calls from reporters, lawyers, and shocked friends. I hired the best attorney in the state. Ironically, someone Marcus had once tried to recruit for NextGen's legal team, and filed for divorce with prejudice. The prenuptial agreement Marcus had insisted on 9 years ago, the one that heavily favored him, turned out to have a fascinating loophole. It was void in cases of criminal fraud. I was entitled to half of everything, and I took it. But money wasn't the real revenge. The real revenge was watching the investigation unfold. See, what Marcus, Jackson, and Vanessa didn't know was that I hadn't just documented their embezzlement. I'd also uncovered that Marcus had been stealing my code, my algorithms, my innovations for years and patenting them under his name. The core technology that made NextGen Solutions successful? Half of it was mine. I filed a massive intellectual property lawsuit against the company. Not for money. I donated my settlement to tech scholarship programs for women and minorities, but to reclaim my legacy. Every patent was reviewed. Every line of code was analyzed by independent experts. The verdict came down 8 months later. 17 major patents were reassigned to me as the original creator. Marcus Ashford, the celebrated tech genius, was exposed as someone who'd built his empire on stolen work. His reputation, his legacy, his identity, all destroyed. The criminal trial took 14 months. I attended every single day, sitting in the front row where Marcus could see me. The prosecution built their case on the evidence I'd provided, and it was airtight. No amount of expensive lawyers could overcome server logs, encrypted messages, and $47 million in trace transactions. Vanessa took a plea deal first, testifying against both Marcus and Jackson in exchange for a reduced sentence. She got 6 years. Jackson held out longer but eventually broke when faced with 30 years in federal prison. He testified against Marcus, admitted everything, and got 15 years. Marcus refused to plea. He went to trial, maintained his innocence, and was convicted on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 28 years in federal prison. I felt nothing watching him being led away in shackles. Not satisfaction, not sadness, not anger. Just a profound sense of closure. Here's what nobody tells you about revenge. It's not about making them hurt. It's about reclaiming what was stolen, your power, your work, your voice. I returned to work, but not as Mrs. Marcus Ashford. I went back to using my maiden name, Dr. Victoria Chun. I accepted a position as Chief Technology Officer at a rival firm, one that actually valued innovation over ego. I also started a nonprofit focused on protecting women in tech from the kind of exploitation I'd experienced. Melissa Thompson divorced Jackson and became one of my closest friends. We started a support network for women whose partners were involved in white-collar crimes. Turns out we weren't alone. The tech industry, once quick to celebrate Marcus, now pretends he never existed. My name appears on the patents I actually created. My work is finally recognized as mine. And the best part? I'm happy. Genuinely, authentically happy in a way I never was during my marriage. If you made it to the end of this story, I want you to take something away. Never underestimate the quiet ones. The people who observe, who document, who remember everything. We're not weak. We're patient. And when we finally move, it's with the force of years of stored power. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation. Would you have gone to the FBI? Or handled it differently? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button because I've got more stories about people who were underestimated and came back stronger than ever. Remember, the best revenge isn't hurting someone. It's becoming so successful that they become irrelevant. And Marcus? He's very irrelevant now. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a woman with a PhD in cybersecurity, a photographic memory for code, and the patience to wait for exactly the right moment to press delete on someone's entire existence. They thought I was just a trophy wife. I was actually a Trojan horse. And by the time they realized it, their empire was already burning.